Natural evil is tough to explain. It is easy to explain that human beings abuse human freedom and therefore bring about evil. Easy to explain how God, in His love, risks us abusing our freedom and causing evil in the world. Natural evil is hard to explain because there seems to be no rhyme or reason to it. There is nothing rational behind the process. So, how can one speak of natural or ontic evil in the face of an all-loving, all-knowing, all-good, all-powerful God? Well, natural or ontic evil is, of course, evil from nature. It is the situation where something happens in nature which brings about harm, evil, death to human persons. So a volcanic eruption buries a village, or scars the lungs of people affected by the eruption. Cancer happens or some other disease happens, and a human being suffers from a diminishment of life, even death. Or may recover, but suffers scarring, because oftentimes the cure is due to a difficult regimen of medicine, which leaves side effects. Other examples would be the pesky insect that bites you and gives you an illness or gives you massive discomfort. All sorts of things we ascribe to natural evil. Now, the first thing we need to understand about natural evil, evil that comes from nature, is that we often use it as a scapegoat for the abuse of human freedom. We scapegoat nature for things that are our fault. So several years ago in Southeast Asia, you had the tsunami. There was a subterranean earthquake and waves spread out across Southeast Asia, and you had people saying, where was God when these waves inundated beach resorts and towns and cities? Well, did God put those beach resorts, towns, and cities in low-lying areas where the waves could get at them? No. Human beings did. And human beings have always known about tsunamis. In Japan, you have markers that date from the medieval period of Japan. And those markers show, and they're still standing, where the high water mark can reach in the event of a tsunami. And yet people build below those markers. In Southeast Asia, maritime communities, communities that take their prosperity, whose economy depends on, whose livelihood depends on the sea, so fishing communities, they were not affected by the tsunami much because they were populated by people who know how to read the ocean. So when the tide goes out, before the tide should go out, people know that something is up and they go for higher ground. And of course you have people who may say, why me, God, when I suffer a disease? And then what they should be asking themselves is, what have I done to get this because of bad diet, no exercise, bad habits like smoking? You get the picture. Oftentimes human beings blame nature for things that we had the freedom and the ability to handle and avoid. That still doesn't get us off the hook entirely, because there are people who still do everything right, and natural evil still affects them. So you have people who exercise, eat right, and they still contract cancer, and they still die. You have people who may be caught at the wrong place at the wrong time. They live in the high ground. They're enjoying a day at the beach and the wave comes. Or they are walking through the forest and a branch falls on them. Things that come without adequate warning. People suffer. People die. So how does one explain such natural evil in the face of an almighty, all-good, all-knowing, all-powerful God? One can explain it this way. Nature itself has freedom. Not freedom in the same way that human beings have freedom. A volcano does not decide to explode. Wolves don't debate the merits of running in packs and chasing after another animal and eating it. No, when we say freedom in nature, nature has the freedom to evolve. And part of that is the risk that nature will take wrong turns. Look at cancer. Cancer basically is natural cell division out of control. The process by which volcanic eruptions happen help maintain the atmosphere that sustains life. Earthquakes are part of the way in which our planet sustains itself. And human beings get in the way of these natural processes. processes that are essential to sustaining life. So nature is given by God freedom, a freedom that is not conscious freedom, but a freedom nonetheless to evolve. And human beings get caught in the middle. And it makes sense, because how can a free humanity live within an unfree creation? It makes no sense. Either God, as Anselm says, respects his order, an order of freedom, or he does not. You cannot have a creation that is half micromanaged and the other half free. Now, where is God in all this? You can say that God is not absent. God is like a gardener. God makes interventions as he sees fit. If God intervenes too much into creation, the same way that a gardener would intervene too much into a garden, the creation can die. But if God remains distant, absent, creation dies as well. So there is this mystery to God's relationship with nature. We do not know fully how God intervenes and how God is present in the sustaining of nature. How God respects our freedom and the freedom of nature, even including the risk that we abuse our freedom or nature takes wrong turns with its freedom. What Christians can say in comforting those who suffer from evil, no matter its source, is that God gets it. Pastorally speaking, you cannot give these rational arguments about evil and freedom to someone who is grieving. What you can say is, again, God gets it. And this is where the importance of the death and resurrection of Jesus comes to the fore. The Christian answer to the existence of evil is that God himself suffered. He suffered from persecution. He suffered harm. And he suffered death. He suffered all those bad things that human beings go through. And he suffered, in suffering death, the worst form of execution that could be meted out by human beings on another human being. As the German biblical scholar Martin Hengel pointed out, crucifixion, which dates back to the Persian Empire, is the systematic form of torture designed to keep its victim alive long enough for the denouement, which is the crucifixion itself. It's the last insult to a series of injuries. But that's not the end. The resurrection says that death, suffering, never, ever, ever has the last word. And the promise that God made to Jesus Christ and fulfilled, whereby his suffering, his death, was not the last word. That is the same promise made to us. And we see a foretaste of that promise being fulfilled every time the church combats evil. Every time the church in its work grants succor to those who are suffering, grants hope to those who are suffering, helps people overcome suffering, and, when it comes time to die, accompanies them through the process of death to resurrection with the Lord.